I want you to picture, just for a second, a 20-year-old kid back in 1950.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
So he's incredibly smart, right? But he has this major, almost debilitating problem.
Oh, let me guess.
He is absolutely, completely terrified of public speaking. Like, we are talking so intensely scared that just the mere thought of standing up in front of a room of people makes him physically ill.
Oh, wow. That is rough.
Yeah, it's bad. And he realizes this fear is going to put a massive ceiling on his entire life. So he forces himself to take a communication course. But the crazy part, the really crazy part, is what happens after he finishes it.
What does he do?
He immediately goes out and volunteers to teach that exact same course to other people.
Wait, really? Just right away?
Right away. And not because he thinks he's suddenly, this master orator. It's because he knows his own psychology. He is terrified that if he doesn't force himself to stand up in front of people every single week, he's going to relapse right back into that paralyzing fear.
That is, well, that's the ultimate psychological commitment device. You basically burn the boat so you can't retreat, right?
Yeah.
Forcing yourself to inhabit the persona until it actually becomes real.
Exactly. And his strategy paid off beautifully. Because that nervous 20-year-old kid went on to become one of the most successful, wealthy, and honestly, well-connected people in the history of the world.
Oh, wait, are you talking about Warren Buffett?
That young man was Warren Buffett.
I love that story.
Right. So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking you through a stack of fascinating sources revolving around the exact philosophy that Buffett learned in that course.
Which is such a goldmine.
It really is. We are looking at Dale Carnegie's legendary 1936 book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, alongside its modern update, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age.
And we should mention, we also brought in some sharp modern critiques from the tech world, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to ask whether this 1930s advice actually holds up today.
Yes, absolutely. We've got the whole spectrum. Now, Carnegie's work is often considered, the definitive manual for adult business success.
Oh, for sure. It's literally the book they hand you when you get promoted to management or when you're trying to close enterprise deals. It is just steeped in corporate lore.
But as I was reading through all these sources, I realized something kind of hilarious about this legendary, sophisticated business manual.
What's that?
The core concepts are shockingly basic, like unbelievably simple. So I am proposing a challenge for us today.
Okay, I'm ready.
I want us to take these 20 minutes of dense source material, all the corporate case studies, the psychology, and distill them into a summary so simple that a small child could understand it.
I love that.
Right. We are going to look at these massive business principles as basically playground rules.
That framing is perfect.
Yeah.
Because when you strip away the 1930s business jargon, Carnegie's rules for adult success reveal a slightly uncomfortable truth.
Which is
that human behavioral psychology hasn't really evolved past the sandbox.
Oh, man. So true.
We like to think of ourselves as these highly rational professionals, right? But underneath the suit and tie, adult egos are incredibly fragile. We operate on the exact same emotional frequencies we did when we were 5.
Which means, if we're on the playground, before you can make any friends, you first have to make sure you aren't making enemies.
Exactly.
You cannot kick the beehive. That is Carnegie's absolute foundational principle. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
And to understand why this is the very first rule, we have to look at the biology of how humans operate under pressure. Because we constantly make this mistake, we assume we are dealing with creatures of logic.
Right, like we can just explain why they're wrong.
Exactly. But we aren't. We're dealing with creatures of emotion, motivated almost entirely by pride and vanity. So when you criticize someone, even if you are factually 100% correct, you trigger their amygdala.
Which is the part of the brain responsible for the fight or flight response, right?
Spot on. So the logic doesn't even penetrate.
It just bounces off.
It literally can't get in. The brain perceives the criticism as a physical threat. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain, and immediately throws up these massive defensive walls. The person isn't hearing your helpful feedback anymore. They're just scrambling to protect their self-esteem.
The sources use this great metaphor for this. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive.
It makes perfect sense.
It really does, because it's exactly like dealing with a toddler. If you want a toddler to share a toy, yelling at them that they are playing wrong never works. It just makes them cry and grip the toy tighter.
Yeah, and we see this play out in high-stakes environments all the time, not just the playground. There's this brilliant historical example in the sources involving John D. Rockefeller.
Oh, this is a crazy story.
Right. So one of his partners, a man named Edward T. Bedford, made a catastrophic investment decision in South America, and it cost the firm $1 million.
$1 million in the early 1900s.
Right, think about how much money that was.
That is a resume-generating event right there. You are getting fired, and
I
you are
know.
probably getting yelled at on the way out.
Oh, most managers would absolutely tear Bedford apart. But Rockefeller, he understood human nature. He knew Bedford had done his best, and he recognized that criticism would only create this simmering resentment that could poison their working relationship for years.
Right.
So instead of attacking the loss, Rockefeller actually found a way to praise Bedford. He congratulated him because Bedford had managed to salvage 60% of the original investment from the disaster.
Wow.
Rockefeller reportedly said, "That's splendid. We don't always do as well upstairs."
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I know people listening right now are probably thinking, but what if the other person is just factually, logically wrong? I mean, I have to tell them, right?
It's the natural instinct.
But isn't trying to change someone's mind with cold logic while they are totally defensive just like trying to tell a tired toddler they are logically wrong for crying over a broken cookie?
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Right. Telling them the cookie tastes the exact same broken doesn't fix it. It just makes them cry harder. You have to address the emotional state first.
And that analogy holds up perfectly in the modern workplace. Like, we read through the Digital Age update of Carnegie's work, and the authors introduce this concept called the invisible boomerang.
The invisible boomerang.
Yeah, because in the digital world, criticism is amplified. When you fire off a harsh Slack message or a critical email, you are totally stripped of your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your body language.
All the softeners are gone.
Exactly. And without those softeners, the receiver's brain naturally assumes a hostile intent. You might think you're just sending a quick, helpful correction, but they read it as a vicious attack.
And so the negativity doesn't fix the problem.
It acts as a boomerang. It forces them to raise their defenses, and that negativity flies right back to hit you in the form of passive-aggressive pushback, or just a completely strained relationship.
Okay, so if criticism just makes people build higher walls, how do you actually get them to lower the drawbridge? Or, going back to our child's play challenge, how do you convince another kid to play the game you want to play?
Well, Carnegie calls this arousing an eager want.
An eager want.
Yeah. The core concept here is that every single act a person performs is driven by some underlying desire, something they want. So if you want to influence someone, you have to completely stop talking about what you want and start framing everything in terms of what they want.
I love the fishing analogy from the text for this. It explains it beautifully. When you go fishing, you don't put strawberries and cream on the hook just because you like strawberries and cream.
Right. The fish don't care about your straw guy.
Exactly. You use a worm. Because you aren't trying to feed yourself, you're trying to feed the fish. If you want to catch the fish, you have to serve what the fish naturally craves.
And the sources highlight this wonderful, almost comical story about the philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson to show how often we forget this basic rule.
Oh, the calf story.
Yes. So Emerson and his son were trying to get a calf into a barn. This is what they wanted, right? So Emerson is pushing the calf from behind. His son is pulling the calf from the front by a halter. And the calf is just stiffening its legs, stubbornly refusing to move.
Just pure force.
Pure force, based entirely on their own desire.
And then the Irish housemaid walks by. She sees these two highly educated men struggling with a farm animal. No, she doesn't write essays or philosophies like Emerson, but she understands the animal's nature.
Better than they do, apparently.
Way better. She just walks up, puts her maternal finger into the calf's mouth, and lets the calf suck on her finger as she gently leads it right into the barn. She gave the calf exactly what it naturally craved, and it followed her willingly.
It's amazing. And humans are no different, really. We just crave slightly more complex things than a finger to suck on. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the deepest human craving, according to the sources, is the desire to be important.
The desire to be appreciated.
Yes. We all just want to feel like we matter.
I have to bring up the Andrew Carnegie story from the sources here because it plays right into this. And just a quick note, no relation to the author Dale Carnegie.
Right. Different Carnegie.
But Andrew Carnegie, the massive steel tycoon, he had these two nephews in college who were completely ignoring their mother's letters. She was frantic, writing them constantly, and getting total silence in return.
Because the mother was pushing the calf. She was demanding what she wanted a letter without offering the boys anything they wanted.
Yes, exactly. So Andrew Carnegie bets his family he can get the boys to reply by return mail without even asking them for a reply.
So smart.
He writes them this super casual letter, just chatting about his life. But at the very bottom, in the postscript, he writes, I've enclosed a $5 bill for each of you.
Oh, here comes.
But he deliberately leaves the money out of the envelope.
He creates a curiosity gap
Mm.
because he knows exactly what college students want.
Yep. He mails the letter with no money. And what happens? The nephews reply immediately. Dear Uncle Andrew, thank you so much for the wonderful letter, but you forgot to include the money.
That is hilarious.
He baited the hook with a worm.
He really did.
Yeah.
But giving people what they crave isn't just about clever tricks or curiosity gaps, though. It is most powerful when you fulfill that deep craving for importance. There is a moving example in the text about a young boy in Detroit who was blind.
Oh, this one got me?
Yeah, he was in a classroom, and his teacher asked him to help her find a lost mouse. She asked him specifically because she knew he had an incredibly gifted sense of hearing.
Wow. Think about that from the kid's perspective.
Right. It was the very first time anyone had shown genuine appreciation for his unique gift. Instead of treating his blindness as a deficit, the teacher made him feel immensely important. And that single moment of appreciation completely changed his trajectory. He leaned into his hearing, focused on music, and grew up to become Stevie Wonder.
That literally gives me chills.
It's powerful stuff.
It is, but we do need to point out a massive distinction the sources make here, because there is a huge gulf between appreciation and flattery.
Oh, absolutely. Night and day.
Appreciation comes from the heart, right? It is sincere. Flattery comes from the teeth out. It's selfish and it's fake.
Yeah, if you've ever had a salesperson compliment your shoes while they are actively looking at your wallet, you know exactly how this feels.
Going back to our playground rules, kids have a flawless BS detector. When an adult gives them fake, over-the-top praise, the kid knows they are being played.
You see right through it.
And adults have that exact same BS detector. If you just flatter someone to manipulate them into doing what you want, they will see right through it. Their amygdala will fire up and they will resent you for it.
So we know how to avoid triggering defense mechanisms, and we know how to appeal to people's underlying desires. But how do you maintain these dynamics day to day? Like, how do you become the person people actively want to be around in the office or on a Zoom call?
Well, it comes down to the magic words we learn in kindergarten. The daily maintenance of relationships is built on shockingly simple actions. Smiling, remembering people's names, letting the other person do most of the talking, and above all, knowing how to say, I'm sorry.
The power of gentleness over force is a huge theme in Carnegie's work. The book references the old fable of the sun and the wind.
Oh, I remember this from when I was a kid.
Right. They are arguing over who is stronger, and they see an old man in a coat walking down the road. They make a bet. Whoever can get the coat off the man is the strongest. So the wind goes first. It blows and howls, creating a furious tornado. But the harder it blows, the tighter the man wraps the coat around himself.
Because force just creates resistance.
Exactly. Then the sun takes a turn, the wind gives up, and the sun simply comes out from behind the clouds and radiates warmth. The man gets warm, mops his brow, and takes the coat off himself. A smile and warmth accomplish what brute force couldn't.
And there is actual biology behind this, isn't there?
There really is. When you smile at someone, you trigger their mirror neurons. Humans are biologically hardwired to mimic the facial expressions of the people we interact with. So when you smile, you are literally forcing the other person's brain to release feel-good neurotransmitters.
That is wild. And the same mechanism applies to names, right?
Absolutely. The sources note that a person's name is to them the sweetest and most important sound in any language. When you hear your own name, your reticular activating system, which is this bundle of nerves in your brainstem, it lights up. It jolts you into paying attention.
It's like a personalized alarm bell.
Exactly. Using someone's name validates their existence. It says, I see you and you matter.
And part of providing that warmth is also the ability to admit when you are wrong. Carnegie's rule here is pretty blunt. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Because when you make a mistake, the other person's ego is primed to attack you. They are ready to be the wind. But if you beat them to the punch and condemn yourself first, it acts as an incredible pressure release valve. Suddenly, the only way for them to nourish their own ego is to show you mercy and tell you it's really not that bad.
The Digital Age Update phrases this brilliantly. They say admitting your fault quickly online is like putting out your own press release before anyone else can control the narrative. You completely disarm the mob by owning the mistake.
And this strategy works wonders in high-stakes negotiations, too. The sources provide this great example of a man who received a letter from his hotel manager stating his rent for a ballroom was going to be tripled.
Tripled. His instinct was probably to storm in and scream about how unfair it was.
Well, he wanted to be the wind, for sure.
Right.
But instead, he goes in calmly. He doesn't complain about what he wants. He acknowledges the manager's position. He says, I understand why you wrote the letter. Your job is to maximize profit.
Yeah.
Then he takes out a piece of paper and lists the advantages and disadvantages for the manager.
For the manager, not for himself.
Exactly. Advantage, the room is free for other events. Disadvantage,
Yeah.
you lose my rent entirely because I can't pay the new rate, and you lose the crowds of cultured people my lectures bring to your hotel, which is essentially free advertising. By seeing things entirely from the manager's perspective without arguing, he avoided a fight and got the rent hike significantly reduced.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. The sources talk about how just tweaking your vocabulary slightly can completely change how someone reacts to you in these tense moments. Specifically, swapping out the word but for the word and.
That is a subtle but incredibly powerful linguistic shift.
It is, because if you say to a colleague, your presentation was great, but we need to work on the data slides, as soon as they hear but, they know a criticism is coming. Everything before the but was just a setup. It feels like an attack.
Yeah, it completely erases the compliment.
Right. If we use our playground metaphor, it's like saying, I like you, but you're bad at kickball. However, if you say your presentation was great, and if we refine the data slides, it will be absolutely perfect. You've completely removed the attack.
Wow, yeah.
It's the exact same feedback, but one feels like a slap and the other feels like a high five.
It changes the mental framing of the listener from defensive to cooperative. You're standing next to them looking at the problem rather than standing across from them pointing a finger.
Okay, so these playground rules sound amazingly sweet. Don't throw tantrums, share your toys, bait the hook with worms, smile, use their names, say you're sorry. It sounds like a perfect kindergarten class.
It does.
But we all know that the playground isn't always fair. What happens when there are actual bullies in the sandbox?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's worth looking at how this holds up today. A really fascinating review from the blog Machine Learning in Real Life looks at Carnegie through a modern corporate lens, and they raise a tough question.
And we should state up front, we aren't taking sides here, just reporting what the sources argue.
Right, totally impartial here. But they ask, if everyone is just trying to be perfectly pleasant and avoid triggering anyone's amygdala, how do you actually fix bad ideas?
The blogger argues that applying this to the messy reality of modern jobs can be deeply frustrating. If the rule is to never complain and never argue, how does a team ever innovate? They literally ask, if you never say you don't like something, you'll never make progress.
And the critique goes even deeper into systemic issues. The blogger points out that when you are facing real toxicity in the workplace, they specifically mention things like sexism, homophobia, or racism. Just putting yourself in the other person's shoes or smiling and being kind does not stop bad behavior.
Yeah, the reviewer felt that in those situations, playing nice just leaves you powerless against outside forces. We're just sharing their perspective, of course, but they also brought up the manipulation aspect.
Right, the fine line between influence and manipulation.
Like the idea of secretly making someone think your idea is actually their idea, so they'll agree to it. The blogger felt that bordered on quiet manipulation rather than genuine relationship building.
What's fascinating here is how this critique really highlights the limits of the playground metaphor. Because Carnegie's rules are undeniably effective for smoothing out everyday social friction. They are the ultimate social lubricant.
For sure.
But to execute them perfectly, you are required to constantly suppress your own negative emotions. You can never lose your temper. You can never vent. You always have to be the bigger person.
That sounds completely exhausting.
It requires immense emotional labor. And as the blogger rightfully points out, it is not a cure-all for truly toxic environments or systemic injustices. Carnegie teaches you how to survive, thrive, and climb within an existing system. But it doesn't necessarily teach you how to dismantle a broken system or confront a bully head-on.
That makes total sense. So what does this all mean for us? Let's bring it all together. By looking at this massive 1936 bestseller through the lens of a child, we've seen that winning friends and influencing people really does boil down to understanding basic human behavioral psychology.
It really does.
Adult egos are just toddler egos with mortgages.
I love that.
To succeed, you have to follow the playground rules. Don't trigger the fight-or-flight response by criticizing. Share your toys by fishing with worms and giving people what they actually want, which is usually just to feel important.
Right.
Use the magic words. Smile to trigger those mirror neurons, use their name, and be quick to say you're sorry when you mess up to diffuse tension.
It worked for Warren Buffett, it worked for John D. Rockefeller, and as we saw with the digital updates, it absolutely still works in our modern world of Slacks and Zoom calls today.
But the critique adds a necessary dash of reality to the mix. It reminds us that these rules are tools, not magic wands.
Exactly. And this raises an important question to leave you with. If making friends and influencing people is truly as simple as listening, smiling, and giving others a fine reputation to live up to, wait, sorry, let me rephrase that without the pause. If it really is as simple as listening, smiling, and giving others a reputation to live up to, why do we as adults find it so exhaustingly difficult?
That is the question.
What changed between the playground and the office that made us build up so much pride, making us forget the sheer power of simply handing someone else the sandbox toy?